Nicholas Alexandrakos, welcome and thank you for joining me. Wanted to have a conversation about New York City Soccer Fandom, and I can't think of anybody better than you to discuss that. So, I guess first question, very personal. Can you tell me a little bit about your fandom, your sport fandom, your soccer fandom, um, how you
Sure.
grew up, where you grew up, etc.?
Yeah. So let me just start off with it's a real pleasure to be here. I'm really excited to speaking to you about my experiences and the New York Cosmos. And for your question, um, so born in Brooklyn, grew up in Queens. I graduated across high school in Flushing. Growing up, uh, there really weren't any professional soccer teams to follow. So,
What year did were you born? What year did you graduate high school?
I was born in 81, so I graduated in 99. Yeah. Um, So I remember when the Metro Stars came out. Um, yes, I believe that was 96. Yeah.
Yep.
And I actually remember going to a game with my father in it was 97 or 98. And just like the excitement and the pride that was associated with like going to a professional game. And something that will never forget was just like the heartbreak like of going to New Jersey and that whole process. It was just so far away and it was so different and it was so alien from my reality as like a 14 or 15-year-old like living in Queens. Um, Prior to that, I thought this was something that I would do quite often. And
Yeah.
on the way home, I mean, when hours and hours and hours into this experience, I knew even without speaking to my father, I'm like, we're not going to be doing this again anytime soon. This is going to be kind of like maybe like an occasional event.
The commute from Queens to the Meadowlands was just too difficult.
It was just too far. It was just I mean I was young. I that might have been the first time I ever went to New Jersey. So I really didn't know about like the geography, like the landscape, like how to get there. But I remember it just took a very long time to get there and a very long time to come home, and just knowing this isn't going to happen again. Yeah,
So the
or at least
Cosmos stopped playing by the time you started kindergarten.
yeah.
Were your was your father a Cosmos fan, or was there any sense of the Cosmos past the Giant Stadium, or was that part of your first trip to Giant Stadium? Oh, the Pelé used to play here, or anything like that?
No, so growing up, I was aware of the Cosmos, very little. Um, I was aware of kind of like the aura of Pele and of Quinalia and even Beckenbauer. I knew these names. They were kind of like these legends that I didn't know too much about, but I knew that they existed. So there was an intrigue about these entities that were no longer playing that were legendary when they were playing. Um, but yeah, no, the Cosmos when they first came out, yeah, that was a bit before my time. Yeah.
So, but did you grow up playing soccer yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. So my dad played semi-pro football, American football.
Oh,
So yeah, the team that he played is called the New York Tomahawks, and they played. Their home field was in it's in Bayside, Queens. It's right off the Grand Central Parkway. It's Alley Pond Park. So I grew up pretty much on the sidelines. So my father, when he was done playing the game, he went into coaching.
the
So say again?
gridiron, American football.
Yeah, yeah. So
Oh,
my earliest memories were being on the sidelines of like an American football field. And I remember like the excitement of like being part of, like the team and these players like embracing me. I remember like getting picked up at random moments. Like these are really like when I was like, 4, 5, and 6 years old. But my father pushed me away from the game. He knew that it was very violent and it was brutal. And my father recently had like hip surgery, so the game was hard on him. Um, he played for about 16 or 17 years. Um,
which is an
so
awful long time in that sport.
yes, yeah. Um, I love that the team is still going. The team is still going. They have a youth team, and I love that they still have a yearly barbecue at Alley Pond Park, which is really cool. But anyway, my father pushed me away from American football. and he pushed me into soccer, a sport that he knew very little about. So that, with the knowledge that there was a team called the New York Cosmos, kind of like is like where I started. This is what my father wants me to play, and this is the team that used to play and I represented New York City.
So, who did you play with as a kid? Was there a particular club team that you played with, or in your school, or how did your soccer fandom really get amped up?
So playing as a kid, I'm as a young kid, I'm 43, so this is going back a while now. I'm now being introduced to other people in the neighborhood that perhaps I wouldn't have had a connection with. I played recreationally. I played with neighborhood kids. I played for fun. I played on actual teams. And I realized there was something special about playing on a team versus like watching. So it was fun to be to observe the American football that my father was coaching. There was something different about actually like playing the game. We moved around a bit, so it was tough to like keep those connections alive when I moved. But so I moved from Queens Village to Bayside, but I would start new relationships very quickly by playing on teams.
So, any of the clubs that you played for in Queens, were they ethnic based, neighborhood based, religious based, any kind of identity? Given the hyphenated identity of being an American, right? Did that Was that something that you tapped into in terms of soccer, or was it just the
So
local?
yeah, so there was a team in Auburndale that I used to play for when I was young. The It was interesting because I'm of Greek and Italian descent. My father's Greek, my mom was Italian. When I was in these spaces that had Italian and or Greek athletes, I kind of was like the linchpin between the communities because I was never enough Italian to just be with the Italian kids, and I was never enough Greek, but I was on the team, and I was kind of like the liaison. I was like the one that was connecting these two groups, which is another thing that I've learned, that there's something special about soccer. It connects people, and it has an ability to um, welcome in newcomers. It has the ability to like draw people in. I don't. When we talk about like the game being beautiful, that's the beauty that I see. Baseball, very complicated game. If you ever go to a baseball game with someone who doesn't know the game, you quickly become an educator. You quickly become like a teacher. But you see how like the interest usually kind of like wanes because it's just like too tough to kind of like learn on the spot. And I think the opposite is soccer. The beauty is its simplicity. The beauty is it's very welcoming. And
So, New York sport fans have no shortage of options. Then, um, were you a fan of the Yankees, Mets, the Knicks, the Nets, the Rangers, or Islanders, or Devils,
so,
the Giants, or the Jets?
so growing up in Queens, naturally I was drawn to the Mets. But it was pretty unique that I didn't feel any sort of like rivalry with the Yankees. Um, Also in the late 80s, the Mets were much stronger than the Yankees. So it was also easy to get excited about the Mets. The Yankees, I just knew of, just that's like another team that happens to play in New York. And still to this day, I don't fully understand the rivalry because
It's
they
a
well, they
recent rivalry, isn't it? It really wasn't much of a rivalry when we were younger, was it?
no, and also I understand rivalry as like when it comes to like baseball, teams that are like fighting for playoff spots. The outs And I remember like before there was like the interleague play, like most likely the Mets and Yankees would never play unless they met in the World Series. And if that's not going to happen, how can you feel a rivalry against another team that you'll never play ever, like almost ever?
That's a
So
great point. As a Giants fan too, I don't feel that way about the Jets. I don't mind when they win, but when they lose, I kind of chuckle a little bit. But it doesn't mean it certainly doesn't bother me when they win, you know?
Yes, listen, the Jets have been rebuilding since Joe Namath.
Yeah, yeah,
It's good, I'm getting a little bit older. My relationship with sports and athletics has changed, being an athletic director. I want the New York teams to do well. It's good for the city. People, New Yorkers and people from upstate, Westchester, Long Island, feel good. They feel better when the New York teams do well. So I can't root against that.
right.
Um, My
And
fa-
that's something really different about New York sports fandom, right? With the exception of the NHL teams, right? And I guess the Knicks and the Nets, but even, I have to say there's never really been much of a rivalry between the Knicks and the Nets in my, and that's, not just an NBA, ABA thing, right? Even though in the NBA and NHL, they do compete for playoff spots, maybe with the NHL, it's a little different. And hockey fandom, I guess, is another rabbit hole, but
yeah, which I
yeah,
know
you're
very
right.
much about. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's kind of interesting that with those, especially with the Major League Baseball and the NFL, right? Um, Yankees, Mets, Giants, Jets, those aren't heated rivalries at all, like we would think of local derbies and other sports. Not at all.
That's a shame.
So,
They really should, with having two teams so close, they should be in the same conference, or they should be in the same grouping, because that would make the games much more exciting.
yeah, but yeah, it's interesting in terms of that rivalry that just doesn't. It's a really, really interesting point. So, fast forward then to 2013 and the Cosmos reboot season, right? So you're aware of the Cosmos, the kind of legendary ghost club that went away when you were in your nascent years. The club comes back. Were you there when the
Yes.
Cosmos took the field against the
Yes.
Strikers?
So I'm living in Astoria. I'm living in Astoria, Queens, at that point in time. And people are talking about the Cosmos, people in the neighborhood, whether it's at a cafe, whether it's you're passing people on the street. I'm on Ditmars Boulevard, I'm on Steinway, whatever. Um, it's exciting. And it actually reminded me a little of with the MLS and the Metro stores. So that when that was going on, and I was, ninth grade, I believe, that conversation was with the people I was like playing soccer with. But when the Cosmos are coming back, so I'm no longer playing soccer. So the conversation is now in the community. And I'm starting to read more online, and I'm starting to see that this is going to be really exciting because this is New York's team. This is going to be a team that's easily accessible. I'm older now. I can get around now. And this is going to be the team that I'm going to support, and I'm going to be there on the sidelines, because prior to that, I'm just consuming images via Satanta, right? Or prior to that, just randomly watching something on TV. But now I'll be able to tap into that vibrancy. I'll be able to be on the sidelines in the stadium and feel that roar in real life. This is a connection to an iconic club that I never had a chance to see. So yeah, I believe the first game was versus Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, yeah.
That was
So when
there.
you're watching on Setanta, sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah,
or Fox Soccer Channel, did you have a club in Europe that you had an affinity for at this time?
the
Or you
only so the only well, yes and no. My roommate at that point in time was from Ireland, from Kilkenny, was my buddy Billy, and his team was Arsenal.
ah,
I
good choice.
remember, yeah. So I remember. So this is also another connection. I think, and you would know better than me. I think in either '99 or in 2000, Thierry Henry left Juve and went to Arsenal,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
about that around then.
And I
Yeah.
remember, so we didn't have the internet really. I didn't have the ability to kind of like track what was going on as much. I remember someone saying something terrible about Thierry Henry. I remember someone saying something terribly racist about Thierry Henry
Huh.
because he wasn't the star that they thought he was going to be at Juve.
It didn't work out on the left wing there. Yeah.
And I thought to myself that that's a real terrible thing to say about an athlete or whatnot. And I said, I hope this Thierry Henry does well in Arsenal.
It worked out okay. Worked out for the guy.
Then now I'm living in Astoria. I've got my roommate, living on 41st Street, and um, it's right around the block from Steinway. It's right around the block from the movie theater. And I have a roommate who's crazy for Arsenal. And I'm going, oh, right. Thierry Henry's playing for them. So Setanta allowed me to kind of like reconnect and kind of like follow that trajectory a little bit. But I was hungry for something more than just TV, me watching. It was nice. I enjoyed moments shared with my roommate, with my friends watching, but I would often look at the crowd and say, that's where I want to be. Like this is okay. This is cool. Time spent with friends, very important.
So
I'm envious of those that get to see this in real life.
you're living in Queens. Were you aware of the Borough Boys as a group of wannabe NY2 fans, if you will, right? So in other words, the Borough Boys are formed as a supporters club with the expectation or the hope that they could have it that like when you were a kid going to the Metro Stars game, it was just too difficult, or you didn't identify with New Jersey or whatever the case may be. It was just too complicated to get from Queens over Manhattan into East Rutherford, New Jersey, right? So were you aware of the Borough Boys? Were you a member
I,
of the Borough Boys? Were you hoping for an MLS team in Queens as they were at the time? Were you part of that whole movement?
so I was not part of the movement, but I had tremendous respect for that movement. Um, I was never really big on social media. Um, so I was watching. I saw what was going on, and I had a deep appreciation for that because I'm like, this is going to be something, but I didn't because I didn't grow up with the internet. The whole idea of like connecting with people you've never met before electronically was just foreign to me.
Yeah.
It still is. It's still. I don't think younger people have this issue, but I'm kind of like, do you really exist? Like,
Yeah.
I'm old school. I'd much rather have a coffee and meet somebody in real life. The Borough Boys, I have tremendous respect for the Borough Boys because I loved what they were doing, but I didn't know who they were. I'm proud to say that I found out who they were, and making the banners, tifo, the songs, providing that atmosphere, was essential. As I got to know some of the players on the Cosmos, and when they spoke about just the warmth and the love and the support, I found out how essential the supporters are to soccer players.
So in terms of your level of engagement, and we in sport management they talk about the ladder of engagement or the escalator or elevator. Pick your upward, downward mobility metaphor as you so choose, but you're there in August 2013 then for the Cosmos Fort Lauderdale Strikers.
And I have the
Which
ticket stub, which I know they don't make anymore, but I have the ticket stub. Yeah.
is fantastic. So your level of engagement at that first game, did you um, become a season ticket holder? What time? At what point did you commit to the club to the point that you're actually joining or affiliating with, associating with a particular supporters group, right? So there were the Borough Boys, um, Las Hinchadas, right? So what drew you towards the supporters culture to the point that you were becoming invested as a member of a supporters club?
When I went to that first game, when I went to that first match, I went with my buddies from the neighborhood that didn't have a connection to the supporters. But and it was a few of us. Um, we got a partial, or we were splitting season ticket plans. There's really like 4 or 5 of us. Um, because I have to be honest, when I went to that first match, again, I'm thinking to myself, this is very far away. Not as far as away as New Jersey, but this is not as close as I would have liked it. Then I'm reading how this is kind of like a reconnection to the history. The Cosmos 1.0 were in Hofstra University. Eventually, they grew out of that space, and this is kind of like a reconnection to that. So I said, okay, this makes sense to me. So I don't know if I could come here for a full season, but I could split a season ticket plan.
Mhm.
We sat in the corner flag. That's where we were. And with every match, my friends and I got closer. So I have one of my buddies is a Cruz Azul fan. One of my friends is a Tigres fan, supporter, right? And I remember hearing these songs being sung in Spanish. So I went to my friends, I'm like, what's going on over here? What are these? What are they, translate. I'm like, do they sing these songs in Mexico? And they're like, no. These guys are most likely from Argentina. These are Boca songs, right? I was like, ah, okay, cool. Boca Juniors, sweet. And the group of us, the 4 or 5 of us from Sunnyside, from Long Island City, from Astoria, we're drawn to the energy. We're drawn to the vibrancy. We don't want to observe, just like I don't want to be in Nevada Smith's watching Arsenal. I want to be at Highbury. I don't want to be in the corner flag section. I want to be in the thick of it. I want to be where those guys are. So we got closer and closer and closer until eventually we found ourselves really like enmeshed in that culture, which I'm proud to say that we still are. One of my friends has returned. He graduated. He's a CUNY graduate, and when the pandemic struck, he moved back to Mexico with his wife. But he still follows. It's kind of strange to say that, how can you follow a team that doesn't have a roster and doesn't have a schedule? But he still very much considers himself a Cosmos fan, because of the experiences that we had. Anyway, that's kind of like our story. That's how we got involved.
So at this point in time, there's a few different supporters clubs
Yes.
to choose from. What made you choose one over another?
Well, I have to say that there really was no choosing. From the outside looking in, you would have no idea that there were any sort of like lines. That's why I love so much like the whole idea of like the 5 points. This is just like the section. It doesn't make a difference what stadium we find ourselves in. This is where the supporters are going to be. So supporter clubs can rebrand. They call themselves different things. New ones pop up like mushrooms. Regardless, this is where everyone's going to be. And this is for the most part, the most vocal and the most passionate, most invested are going to feel very comfortable. And that's, like I said, speaking with the players, they let me know how important it was. So they were experiencing exactly what we were trying to do, which is to like motivate them. And they were motivated, which made me want to get more people involved in the supporters section, because I don't know if we're having the same impact when we're chanting "Let's go Mets,"
Mhm.
Or just thinking about Flushing Meadows, Corona Park with US Open coming up soon. They literally hold up signs to be quiet. I want the opposite. I want people holding up signs to say, let's get even more raucous,
Yeah.
right? Because of its positive impact on you're influencing the game in a positive and in a beautiful way.
So, did you then become an official member of a supporters club? Season 2, season 3? How did that, in terms of your actual formal engagement, if you will, right? Instead of, so you're out by the corner flag, 5 points is the term used for all the supporters that were seated behind the north goal,
Yep.
right? At when the Cosmos are playing in Hempstead on the campus of Hofstra, right? So you kind of shift back to the North Goal, right? You get involved there. To what got you involved with supporters club, or a particular supporters club, or
The welcomeness. So the energy and the vibrancy and the music and the passion was the draw. And then what kept me there were the actual people. The people that embraced me and welcomed me and saw that my modest group of 3 or 4 friends were getting closer and closer. We were welcomed. And that's something that I'll never forget. And I hope that I continue that in all aspects of my life, because I remember how positive that was for me, like how great of an experience that was to be welcome. Now, regarding like like being official or whatnot, there was no form that if you wanted to be there and you understood that this is like a standing section, you kind of like understood the unwritten rules, like then you were an official member. There was no like board members or anything like that. It was ruled by love. It was ruled by passion. And that, which I hope we get time to speak about, kind of like spilled over into like compassion for all of New York City.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like we went from the corner flag to the 5 points, and the 5 points to where we are today.
So the Borough Boys themselves went on an interesting journey then, in terms of initially trying to help provoke MLS to awarding a second franchise in New York. But by the time MLS makes that commitment, they had committed themselves to the Cosmos cause instead.
Yes.
But when Manchester City and the Yankees partner up to get that second franchise, some Cosmos supporters go to the ostensibly major league franchise. That in some ways kind of maybe affected numbers overall in the stadium, but it seems to have kind of served as a catalyst, or kind of amped up the commitment, I think, to people in the 5 points, especially, right? And that it really refined and defined Cosmos fandom as a sort of a resistance to hegemony.
Absolutely, because at the same time, we both know who we are and what we are, and we also know what we're not. Now we could finally see that's what we don't want to become.
Yeah.
We are an independent club. We are an authentic club.
So from your perspective, what kept you loyal to the Cosmos? You must know some people, right, that became NYCFC fans. And the idea of dual allegiance, right? So I know people that were Metro Stars fans that couldn't become Red Bull fans.
Right.
I know people that were Metro Stars fans, then Red Bull fans, that have then gone to either Cosmos or NYCFC, right? Were there any of that circle of friends that went to the Cosmos games with you in 2013? Did any of them become NYCFC fans, or
Absolutely. Well, my neighborhood buddies, absolutely
yeah?
not. It it didn't make sense to them.
And was that because of the Manchester City affiliation? Was that a Bronx Queens thing? Or is that a matter of your sense of what MLS represented?
It was all of these things. It was, although I don't necessarily fault anyone for making that decision to walk away, especially because of what has happened, that is something that I could never do. And my group of friends, they were just like that. We're wearing the jersey, right? The badge. We're now wearing supporter made t-shirts, merchandise, right? We're singing these songs. We're meeting the players are coming up to us after, in jubilation after a goal is scored and celebrating with us. It would invalidate all of those experiences if all of a sudden now we're wearing a different jersey, singing different songs, and supporting like a franchise that just kind of like popped up out of nowhere. That's kind of like second fiddle to Manchester City, which And there's a lot of wonderful and beautiful people that come from Manchester. But if you put a map of England down in front of most fans in New York City and say, show me where Manchester is, they wouldn't know where it is. Forget about have you ever walked down these streets. I mean, you have an undeniable connection to this team. You're underneath this umbrella in a city you've never been to. It just doesn't make sense. Because of my identity as a New Yorker, because of growing up here and being part of like New York hardcore scene, being part, like going to like underground hip hop shows, always kind of like banging on this drum on like what it means to be New York, what it means to be a New Yorker. Maybe it's excessive pride. Like we're second fiddle to nobody. Love all, embrace all. You're here for 5 minutes or 5 years or 50, you're a New Yorker. But once you have that, you view everything else slightly differently, right? You look at other places and you say, this isn't serious. I went to Chicago once. I'm walking around, I'm going, where is everybody? I thought this was a grand city. I see the skyscrapers. I like the layout. There must be a tremendous event going on somewhere that the entire city. I feel like this is the merger of a suburban landscape and a city, right? The only place that I've ever really felt that was similar to New York, like if I wasn't like at the professional level, if I wasn't a New York Cosmos supporter, I would be a Montreal Impact supporter. And the reason is because I had the privilege of going there. I've been there twice, and that's a beautiful city.
Agree. Yeah.
And walking around, like you feel it's similar and it's different, obviously, the French influence. I'm going, there's something cool about this place. So the
Well,
Cosmos
there's a real
closed.
affinity with those Montreal support. I've been to a couple matches there too, and there's a real affinity between the ultras for Montreal and Cosmos supporters, and
Yes.
um, so
And
I
that's been
wanted,
going on for years.
yeah, so I wondered if you could talk a little bit about those affinities, right? So whether it's the ultras in Montreal, when the Cosmos supporters first gathered with Cosmos front office leading up to the 2013 season at the end of 2012, that meeting was at Jack Dempsey's in Midtown Manhattan, right? The Celtic supporters club. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about those, even though you weren't necessarily a fan of those other clubs. But I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the supporters club, the kind of real fanatical, hardcore Cosmos supporter fan base, and the alliances, if you will, that have been forged with supporter clubs of other international clubs in New York and outside of New York.
I was aware of Celtic because of Samaras. That really is one of my first connections. And I'm just speaking for myself. Others within the supporters section will have their stories. But for me,
So it wasn't having a Greek striker. It was just a matter of the striker who's training with us, even though he never played for us.
no. But I'm saying previously. Well, I knew of Samaras, and then I'm like, oh, okay, Celtic. Celtic is a club in Glasgow. Okay, interesting. The door was open because of Samaras. Then I start to ask around, where can I get more information about this club? Because a Greek guy plays there. And I start to find out about this is a club that was started to address poverty and food insecurity and to uplift migrants. And now they're this tremendous club that has just signed a Greek striker. What's not to love about this? Then fast forward to Cosmos rebirth, 2012, 2013. And there's Celtic supporters from Scotland And I'm like, okay, cool. Let's talk more about your experiences. And those guys were great. And they really shaped my my fandom, because it's tough to be a supporter when you're not in the stadium. I'm on the outside looking in. But I have a deep appreciation for the history and for the lineage, the connection, the message. And I tried, and plenty of other supporters tried to recreate something similar in New York City. So that's why, when we're going to fast forward now to Coney Island, that's why prior to moving to Coney Island, we reached out to the Coney Island Lighthouse Mission. We said, we're going to be more than just a group of people that are going to go to the stadium and go rah, rah, rah for 90 minutes or for however long the game goes. We're going to be a voice for those that are voiceless. We're going to uplift the most vulnerable members of our community, right? We have neighbors that are struggling. We have neighbors who are having real difficulty. Well, if we could come together and cheer on the Cosmos, and we're coming to this new neighborhood now in Coney Island, well, maybe we show up before the game starts and we help out. Maybe we stick around afterwards. Maybe we show up on the weekend, like around noon. So we reached out to the Lighthouse Mission, and I'm proud to say that we have, I mean, it has to be almost 10 years of a connection between Cosmos supporters and the Lighthouse Mission.
So with Cosmos playing at Coney Island in Brooklyn, you start to help out with social causes.
Yes.
You mentioned the Celtic Association. It seems to me like the East River Pirates and the St. Pauli supporters was another real important connection in terms of what was going on in the 5 Points. Yeah.
Yes. So I don't have a similar story regarding St. Pauli, because at that point in time, I was kind of like, I've already taken on so much. I have a deep appreciation for Celtic. I understand we now have created like this triangle, Cosmos, Celtic, and St. Pauli. But I was like, there's only so much time in the day. I want them to do well. I understand what they're doing, but I was never a supporter. It was just too much for me to follow. There are others who are diehard supporters. I know a few people that have flown over to Hamburg to catch a match, and I think that's really important for a fan of any club. I think is to get that like real life experience within the stadium, even if it's only once, and not for the selfie. I'm just saying you need to go there for the experience, because every genuine and authentic supporter culture is going to have its own thumbprint and its own experience, which you're not really picking up from afar.
Yeah. So you've mentioned Boca. I also think of Ajax and Marseille. Strong alliance between those two supporters' cultures, right? For various reasons going back more than 2,000 years, right? But those two clubs, their supporters have their home bases in the five boroughs, of course, too. But they haven't really been integrated as much into that Cosmos Supporters Club scene. But would you say that covers it in terms of within the 5 Points, probably the strongest representation of other clubs, or at least affinity in terms of organized supporters clubs, would be Celtic and St. Pauli, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't think I'm leaving anybody out with that, right?
Yeah, I don't think so.
But then you've got a shirt on right now that talks about another club that's actually, I know we like to joke about the Republic of Vermont, but
People's Republic of Vermont.
yeah.
Yes.
So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about. So then you're talking about whatever um, with the lighthouse in Coney Island. but also if you could take us to what obviously the Cosmos as a club are going through all of their challenges when the second division status for the NASL is revoked, ownership changes, the NASL lingers on for one more season, then suddenly there's NPSL Pro, there's NISA, and then there's the pandemic. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, when the club first goes on a hiatus, as supporters, what you did uh, for the community and how that's kind of evolved to where we're at right now. Despite the club being on hiatus, there is still this hardcore, rabid, devoted, loyal Cosmos fan base that are kind of keeping the flame and being really socially active and in the spirit of cosmopolitanism. So I wonder if you could talk about Vermont FC or even International FC or anything that you could say in terms of what it means to be a Cosmos fan, despite the fact the Cosmos aren't playing now.
So when the Cosmos shut down, there was a giant question mark. What do we do now? And we already had a history of supporting the Lighthouse mission. But what we did because of the pandemic, we kind of brought it to the next gear. Instead of like occasionally going to the Lighthouse mission, maybe once a month, we discussed if we're not going to buy season tickets this season because it's been canceled. Well, if we just put that money towards addressing food insecurity, that's the money we were going to spend anyway. And let's start with that. Sasha and Mamad, who are Cosmos supporters, Mamad famously celebrating with Bleddy on the field when Bleddy scored in like the 89th minute versus BlackRock off of that corner kick. You'll see Mamad on the field there. So when the pandemic struck and Sasha and Mamad let me know that they're thinking about creating, a food pantry and eventually maybe like a soup kitchen, I was like, yeah, sure, because we've already been doing pretty much the same thing, not at this scale, but we've been supporting the Lighthouse mission. So when they created EV Love Queens, QNS, because that's what its first name was. Because if you recall, when the pandemic struck, it struck in the city, it struck really like East Elmhurst and kind of like that area, Corona. So Sasha Mamad was living in the East Village. And they had a few friends in the East Village. And we were coming from outside the East Village. We were going to their apartment to cook, to address food insecurity with the funds that we raised. First, it was the season ticket money. Then we were great things. This makes me think another great connection that the Cosmos supporters have is with Clapton. DJ Tommy Sparks. Yes, forgot about, yeah. Clapton. And I could talk about a very, very nice Clapton connection when I'm done with this. DJ Tommy Sparks from England, Clapton supporter, found love, moved to Brooklyn, coming to Cosmos games. Now, how can he help out? He was live streaming sets and asking people to donate to EV during the pandemic. So you could tune in and listen to DJ Tommy Sparks, Clapton supporter, because he understands the value and the importance of a community club. We didn't need to teach him anything. If anything, he was teaching us. And what was his gift? His gift of music, which is really appreciated by all or by most. And he's raising money for EV during the pandemic. So it was all word of mouth. It was a very beautiful start during a very confusing and very challenging and very dark period. We decided we're going to cook, and we thought this was only going to be for a couple of weeks. We didn't know. We're like, oh, we'll help support our most vulnerable neighbors. That was February 2020. 4 years later, we've created almost 600,000 gourmet inspired meals. So this is not like ham and cheese sandwiches, right? This is not like Cheerios, right? And social media can be a beautiful thing. Through our friends network, and then through social media, we're finding local chefs, local cooks who were out of work. Everything shut down. And they're saying, you know what, I have a skill set, just like Tommy Sparks, his skill set was music. We're getting local chefs to show up and to cook meals that you'd have in a restaurant. It wasn't just giving food to somebody that was hungry. It was supporting them by giving them a delicious meal that was ideally going to put them on the right path. Because if you remember, especially as a kid, someone making you like a home cooked meal, it was so much more than just like those flavors. It's the feeling, right? It's the warmth. I know someone cares about me. Well, we as Cosmo supporters and we as people volunteering at EV Loves NYC, EV Loves Queens, which then became EV Loves NYC, we're giving care to our neighbors. Again, via social media, we're now having organizations from all 5 boroughs reach out saying, hey, can we get meals? At the most challenging point of the pandemic, there were local hospitals that were reaching out to Mamad saying, we don't know who you are necessarily, but we have people, we have patients who are requesting, they've never had this before, they were requesting meals from EV Loves Queens. So that's when, around the time that we decided we have to change the name to really reflect what's going on here, because we have meals going to the Bronx, we have meals going to Brooklyn. It's no longer just going to, you know, Roosevelt Avenue. It's no longer going to just East Elmhurst. And this still continues to today. We've gone from Sasha Mamad's apartment to Cafe C&B. Cafe C&B is where we used to have film viewings pre-pandemic. Ali is the owner. Ali is a Turkish Kurd. And he wanted to support us when we were kind of like putting the spotlight on the atrocities that were going on pre-Qatar World Cup. He's like, I'll absolutely give you access to my cafe. It's Cafe C&B. So if you're ever in the East Village, swing by. When the pandemic struck, and we're in Sasha Mamad's 1-bedroom apartment, we're running out of space. Everyone's bumping into each other. We then asked Ali if we could cook in Cafe C&B. And he said, absolutely. I remember you guys were having the film viewings. When there was the curfew, if you remember, there was a period of time, mandatory curfew. Unfortunately, someone broke into Cafe C&B and kind of like trashed the place, which denied us the ability to make meals. So right down the street, right? So that's Avenue. So obviously it's Avenue C&B, but it's East 7th. So around the block, East 6th, is a community center. It's a synagogue, over 100 years old, reconverted to a community center. And EV Loves NYC entered there, and really this is a bigger space. We can now accommodate more volunteers, and we could help New Yorkers even more. So we were there for a couple of years. We went from just an organization that was expecting to be around for a couple of weeks to a nonprofit. And I was on the board. We're on the first ever board, the first year. I was on the board. A couple of things that were essential for us. This was a fully volunteer organization. Every single dollar that was raised went to buying produce or paying the electric bill or paying the gas bill. We did a little bit more research, and we saw about like disaster capitalism. Like, people are profiting handsomely off of the misfortune of others. And we said we're going to go in the opposite direction, right? We're going to ensure that this is fully top to bottom, or it's not even top to bottom, left to right, everyone involved. This is coming from a very warm and compassionate place, not for financial gain. And then now they're at a new location, right? So EV has actually outgrown the 6th Street Community Center. We went from making, I don't know, Mamad would know better, but we went from making 200 meals to 600 to now thousands of meals just on Sundays, right? Occasionally there's days sprinkled throughout the week, but the main food production day is Sunday.
And obviously, not only were you addressing food insecurity amongst the homeless, but also with the refugees that have been just kind of
started, yes. Yeah, it started with, and thank you for reminding me, it started with just homeless or the working poor, people who can afford an apartment, but they're not possible to provide for 3 square meals a day. Then we have the migrant situation that is being unaddressed. The city is kicking around this kind of like political football. As a New Yorker, that doesn't sit well with me. And I'm proud to say that I was able to help out in a very modest way, which reminds me also, it's important that we bring up, we reached out to the Cosmos, and this is, again, one of the many things that separates this club from other local clubs. We walk amongst legends, local legends. Unknowingly, I don't know if everyone knows this. Emanuele Sembroni, Danny Satella, Vincenzo Candela, Siobhan John Brown, and plenty others. These are players for the Cosmos who should have been concerned with training, with working out, with staying fit, et cetera, et cetera. They were volunteering. They were donating their time. They were working alongside us, whether it was the Lighthouse Mission or the EV Loves NYC. In particular, it's important for me to bring this up. Vincenzo Candela, who was living in Queens, he would come to the Lighthouse, to EV Loves NYC with his partner, unannounced, as normal as you could imagine a professional player walking into this volunteer organization. And I remember being with fellow volunteers, and we were giddy, and we would say, did anybody know that Vincenzo was coming to volunteer? And we're saying, he didn't tell. He was showing up with his partner. I don't know if other supporters, I don't know if other teams have stories like that. And that's why if the Cosmos never return, and I hope they do return, I'm absolutely okay with it. Because they have left the New York Cosmos badge. We have taken it, is now ours. It now represents a very compassionate group of New Yorkers who, when all soccer was shut down, who, when their team was taken away for whatever reason, I'm not here to point fingers. When multimillionaires and multi-billionaires are involved in litigation, it's best for working class to stay away. We've won. We have won. The Cosmos badge is now, will be forever known as the symbol of people who decided to make a difference when New York, when the world was in a very scary and uncertain space. That's what the New York Cosmos badge represents. Not just to me, but to the 600,000 meals that were created, to everyone who's ever received a bit of warmth from the Lighthouse Mission, they'll connect that to the Cosmos. And if they never play, so be it. So be it. As for Vermont Green, that's a beautiful story. Patrick is a dear friend of mine. Patrick is a tremendous part of the Cosmos supporter culture.
You're talking about Patrick Inferno, yeah.
Yes. Who was Patrick and Patrick's partner were over my place. I live in Astoria. They were over my place last night because they're in Greece. So Patrick, I hope you're having a great time. Enjoy Athens, enjoy the islands. Take a ton of pictures. Anyway, Patrick and Patrick's friends from Vermont, similar to Sasha, Mamad, and myself, when the pandemic struck, it gave us opportunities to help others. We in New York decided to help others via the creation of meals to address food insecurity. Patrick and Patrick's buddies in Vermont decided to create a club that was going to highlight something similar. There's obviously a connection, but they're in Vermont. And they have this club now that has, well, I mean, their stadium is selling out 2,500 seats every single home game. There was a void, and they've filled that, right, with soccer that's meaningful, soccer that has an authentic connection, soccer as a tool to positively impact the local community. And guess what? What does the local community mean? Maybe it's my neighborhood, maybe it's my specific block, maybe it's the entire world. And that's what Vermont Green is about making a positive impact globally. We're looking past arbitrarily drawn boundaries, right? This is a global issue. And again, for me, it ties back to the Cosmos. They were to never come back, so be it. Because from the embers, the wreckage, you have Evie Loves NYC, and from the wreckage, I believe, you have Vermont Green.
Yeah, so right, so the idea of Vermont Green then, right? So some people during the pandemic leave the city, go out into rural areas where they maybe had grown up or whatever. And in the case of Vermont Green, a very progressive, politically oriented club starts up from the grassroots and then competes in the USL. Maybe you'll have Bernie Sanders giving a halftime talk or something like that. But those same Montreal Ultras that I was talking about before, you'll see them, they cross the border from Quebec and they're playing their drums, which even have Cosmos stickers on there for the Montreal supporters come to the Vermont game across the border with Cosmos stickers on their drums. So there's this kind of thing or continuity going on. And also more locally, right, at least for yourself and some other Cosmos supporters, the emergence of New York International Football Club has provided kind of another grassroots outlet, at least until a Cosmos team is back competing on the pitch, hopefully someday. Yeah.
Eric Cantona famously said, you could change your religion, you could change your wife, you can never change your club. It's like not possible. And I would love to be able to ask Eric, what do you do when your club goes away? Then are you allowed to transition from one club to the next? And what we have seen with the Cosmos supporters, fans, some people have gone to NYCFC. Some people have gone back to just supporting, if it's the Boca Juniors fans, that's all they're interested in. The Celtic fans, that's all they're interested in. Some people are traveling out to New Jersey. God bless. What I have felt is the professional game does not need Nicholas Alexandrakos helping them. They're doing fine. People are making a lot of money. People are profiting handsomely. Let me reconnect to the game in New York City at the grassroots level, because I have seen a very big and historic club teetering. Let me see what's going on at the grassroots level, where in a league that's been around for 100 years, that has these community clubs, these ethnic clubs that have been around for 100 or 90 or 80, 50 years, whatever. What's their recipe? What Cosmos have shut down twice. New York Ukrainians have, Pan Cyprians, Greek Americans, 1946, the Greek Americans, 1946, uninterrupted. Pan Cyprians, 1975, right? Number one amateur team in the United States right now is the New York Pan Cyprians, Pan Cyprian Freedom. So I'm drawn now to the Cosmopolitan League. And then I hear about the very tragic death of Davide Giri. I never heard of New York International before. At that point in time, they were Division III. Cosmopolitan Soccer League has 4 tiers. And I reached out to that club to send my condolences.
Oh, so you didn't know International FC until Davide passed away.
Yes.
Oh,
Can we cut things off here and continue tomorrow?
yeah. Fantastic. I'd love to pick it up there. Yeah. Great stuff. I'll let you go. Thank you so
Hold
much for
on.
your time.
Let me just show you.
This is Sophia.
This is Sophia.
Aw. Hello, Sophia.
That's Dr. Kilpatrick.
Hello,
Say hello.
Sophia. Nice to meet you. Hello.
Can you see? Say hello. So yeah,
Adorable.
thank you.
Adorable.
If you don't mind, if we can continue perhaps tomorrow.
Perfect. Sounds great.
But the truth is, I never heard of New York International before in my life. It was Davide's death. I read it in the hi, yeah, say hello. I read about his tragic death, and I was heartbroken. Hi, as a New Yorker, you know, I'm like,
Yeah.
that this shouldn't happen anywhere, but this is an athlete on his way home, and I'll explain. Okay. I'll explain the rest of the story tomorrow, ideally.
Perfect.
Maybe around 2 o'clock.
Yep. Sounds good.
Fantastic. Thank you. I hope this is going well.
Oh, wonderfully. Thank you so much. Ifaristo.
Yeah, Paricolo. Okay, take care, Dr. Kilpatrick.
Cheers.